Chapter 6: The Political Boomers. Political boomers are not specifically politicians born between 1946 and 1964, but rather a wide array of boomers who are simply politically motivated. Activists, virtue signalers, nonprofit employees, journalists, NGOs, Peace Corps volunteers, lawyers, corporate social responsibility heads, and actual politicians. They can even include other types of boomers we mentioned before, most notably professor boomers and teacher boomers. Any boomer who's politically active can be considered a political boomer. Though there is a wide array of them, political boomers have these four general traits in common. They are lazy. Rarely do any of them hold any real jobs or produce something of value. They are also arrogant, even tyrannically thinking they know better, often at early ages, and deem themselves fit to lead society and tell society what to think and what to do. If you look at nearly every modern American politician today, and the original leaders of communist Russia and China, you'll find rich, spoiled elitists who were desperately afraid of real work, and conveniently found themselves worthy of being leaders rather than workers. Consequently, they have nothing in life but their politics. They are not a mother or a father as much as they are a vegan or a feminist. They are not a plumber or an accountant as much as they are an environmentalist or a socialist. They may have some other role in society, but they will often define themselves, value themselves, and introduce themselves via their politics. Thus the joke, "How can you tell who's the pilot in the room? Don't worry, he'll tell you," can also be applied to, "How can you tell who's the vegan, pacifist, feminist in the room? Don't worry, she'll tell you." They put their politics, or politically related career, above all else in life, including their family, their children, their fellow man, and the country. They do so because their fear of real work is so great they will sell their own country into slavery if it keeps the easy money rolling in via their lifelong political career. And finally, their politics are almost always parasitic, meaning they always need other people's money to solve or achieve their political objectives, but they will never actually offer their own money to achieve those political objectives. Thus, you see political boomers becoming professional politicians, heads of bogus nonprofits, panhandle for government grants to help the children and other such things, but never once produce something of value, or use their own money to solve their championed causes. It would be one thing if political boomers, and political people in general, just kept to their own, let the rest of us be, and lied to themselves that somehow they actually cared about the poor, the homeless, disadvantaged groups, etc. But they don't. In being political, they affect government policy and law, thus forcing their politics, and taxes, on us otherwise innocent people. You can't have straws in West Coast states because political boomers saw a turtle with a straw up its nose. In Oregon, you can't pump your own gas because political boomers want the votes of the handful of gas station attendants that law employs, thus all Oregonians, and unfortunately Minnesotans who happen to be visiting the state, have to pay extra to cover their salaries. In Seattle and San Francisco, you have people defecating in the streets, setting up homeless camps, and spreading bubonic plague because political boomers need to look like they care about the homeless. And if you care about the financial price we pay for political boomers, take a look at your state, local, and federal budgets, and you'll find the average person is paying about 38% in taxes. But the real problem is not so much that I can't pump my gas in Oregon, or that I have to step over shit in San Francisco. It's that political boomers, and political people in general, are charlatans, and really good ones at that. They can usually sell their political ideologies to a naive public because their politics sound so wonderful, even utopian. But in believing in something for nothing, what you're really believing in is nothing more than lies. And in believing in lies, you are guaranteed by the law of reality to inevitably pay a price. Thus the millennials entered into a deal with the devil of sorts when it came to believing what political boomers sold them. And like all deals with the devil, there was a gigantic price to be paid. The perfect example of this is President Obama, and it's an important economic lesson for all of us to understand. If there was a rock star politician that the millennial generation squealed like teenage girls at an Elvis concert over, it was Barack Obama. He was everything they were programmed to want. A polished, intelligent, socialist-light black gentleman who was going to cut through the politics of Washington and finally bring some sort of justice and fairness to the people. And he did. Facing the financial crisis of 2009, he increased government spending more than any peacetime president before him in real terms. He ran deficits well over $1 trillion for the first half of his presidency and paid for it by printing money. The money went to a potpourri of social and socialist programs, but as it pertained to millennials specifically, Obama started lending money directly to students under the federal government, so those students would not have to deal with any of those icky, mean, evil private lenders. To the untrained, ignorant, and young millennial eye, this seemed great. It seemed as if President Obama was going to help them. He was finally doing something to help lower tuition, unlike all politicians in the past. But, as it is with every deal with the devil, when you don't adhere to reality, there is a price to pay. Because in flooding the college market with $100 billion a year in extra student loans, all he really did was jack up the price of tuition. In other words, he achieved the exact opposite of what he intended to do. If you really wanted to lower tuition, you would deprive colleges of money, not flood them with hundreds of billions more. You'd cut all government loans and lending to students. You would also, ironically, eliminate all scholarships and parental money from flooding the college market as well. And if you really wanted to lower tuition, a year of high school seniors should have boycotted college for just one semester, starving all colleges of tuition money, forcing them to drastically cut prices. But the honest truth is, President Obama, though well-intended, was woefully ignorant and uneducated about economics, just like the millennials he was trying to help. And in voting for him, all millennials managed to do was jack up their own tuition and their own student loan balances, of which they would pay unnecessary interest on for at least a decade to come. The millennials simply shot themselves in the foot. The deal with the devil gets worse. Because money doesn't just stay in one place once it's printed. It circulates. So once those trillions of dollars came hot off the presses, they went into the hands of contractors, welfare recipients, college students, and the millions of other people who got some of that newly minted money. But no matter who got it or how many people did, that money inevitably and invariably ended up at the same place. The bank. And banks make money by lending it out. If you think about it, banks only lend money for large purchases people normally can't pay cash for, thus regulating most loans to 4 key areas: mortgages, auto loans, corporate buybacks and investing, when a company either buys back its shares or the shares of other companies on the stock market, and health emergencies, typically via a home equity loan or credit cards. And though according to the Consumer Price Index there is no inflation, if you look at what the proceeds of those bank loans went to purchase, you'll find there is indeed a ton of inflation in the market when it comes to housing prices, auto prices, the stock market, that is, stock prices, and health insurance and costs. In other words, in printing off all that money, Obama, and Bush Jr., and more recently Donald Trump, merely flooded these respective markets with money, driving up their prices. So all the millennials really managed to do in voting for Obama and all that free money he was going to give them was price themselves out of the housing market, drive up rents, drive up the price of cars, price themselves out of the stock market or retirement market, and drive up insurance and healthcare costs, as well as cripple themselves with insultingly high levels of interest-bearing student debt. The millennials made their deal with the devil. Now they're paying for it in spades. Even if the devil was a very nice, well-intending, politically correct, socialist-light, affirmative action president. We can go on about the different types of political boomers, but the key thing to realize is their promises almost always end up becoming deals with the devil. Social scientist boomers promised you the solution to poverty, racism, child abuse, sexism, and all the world's problems. All they managed to do was destroy the nuclear family, jack up your taxes to 38%, while giving your parents the excuse to drop you off at a daycare while they got divorced, optimistically assuming they got married in the first place. Activist boomers promised young millennials immediate and heroic purpose and agency in the world, long as they majored in social justice and not mechanical engineering. Meanwhile, at 35, millennial activists are poor, in debt, lonely, and barren. And communist Venezuelan boomers promised utopia to its people, and now the Venezuelans are eating their pets. Whatever variant of false god the political boomers convinced the millennials to worship, it was false. And in misleading them to this bogus agency and purpose in life, they managed to destroy millions of millennials' lives, not only financially, but spiritually and philosophically as well.